So, today is July 10th, 2024. I'm dating this on purpose because today is Ultraman Day, and we are going to be talking about the new Ultraman for this. Uh, Spoiler alert, I have pros and cons to this episode. I came into this not with the most positive of mindsets. It hasn't totally won me over yet, but it did its best, and I think there's a lot of good to outweigh the bad that I did have with it. Which I mean, some of that definitely comes off of just how really highly we regard Blazar, which I'm currently wearing my Blazar shirt. It's mirrored on here, but yeah, so I think some of it just came down to we were so just incredibly positive with that series. Like we had a few negatives here and there, but we liked that one so much. It's hard to come off of the tails of a show you genuinely loved. And for those who've watched Josh's live reaction to the final episode, one that just hits the ground running on the last episode. hmm So let's get started on this. We started with started in media res with Arc fighting a kaiju. Uh, I wrote the exact same thing. I wrote it feels like Zedon without being Zedon. like it's so clearly supposed to be a nod to that with not while not actually being that. Like again, this I said this in private a few times. This show is really trying to be like a modern take on Showa, and I can appreciate that. Um, oh yeah, uh, yeah. There's the kaiju fight we get later in the episode. There's some things I really want to talk about because there's some stuff it does really well. Some really creative stuff that I'm happy to see in this show. Some stuff that when our other co-host Alex gets around to watching it, I think he's going to appreciate a lot too. Uh, his beam attack where he starts over here, does the whole circle thing before he does the fire. He's gonna eat that up. Yep. Oh God, no. Of course he does. Yep. He's arguably at this point one of their top three most important kaiju. But yeah, so we also get a cut to a newscast, and we find out that Ark has been fighting kaiju for 3 months by the start of this episode. Which, how do you feel about a an Ultraman who is really established in his town at this point? Mhm. I Yeah, I appreciate it. The only time I can really think of that I've seen that in one of these shows, which I haven't watched all of them, I still need to sit down and watch Cosmos and a few other Heisei shows. But the only time I can really think of where we have an Ultraman that's really established in their world is Ultraman Rising. Other than that, we have Ultramen who have been an Ultraman before that. We're talking about Orb too, and in that Guy has been Ultraman Orb for a while, but this is the first, like, he's a new Ultraman to Earth. And this is kind of like a little different because we have an Ultraman who everyone is used to being around at this point, which I kind of appreciate. Then we get a cut to our protagonist. There's a couple things that happen like in his morning routine, which I appreciated. First, that he was watching the news, like, so it kind of cuts from, hey, we're seeing the news being done to, hey, our main character's watching the news. And we get a nod to him being Arc right away, which is he has a the picture. Yep, yep, the picture. Which apparently there's been a thing that they've been doing, which I appreciate, where apparently Arc is that picture of Ultraman Arc is a picture he drew as a kid that he keeps around as inspiration. Yeah. So I'm wondering if we're gonna get like some more play with how that functions. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting little twist. It's just like I wish they had talked about that a little in the episode instead of me having to learn that through like press release stuff. But like it's kind of a cool idea having an Ultraman who from an early age had like this image of what an Ultraman should be and then becomes that image. But yeah, so I appreciated that. I also I love that Yuma, our main character, literally rides his bike through the newscast that's going on. Yep. That somehow he just gets to ride his bike through a live newscast, which I love. And I love like he rides through and like she's kind of like thrown off and the camera crew's like, "Hey, you know, you're still live. You have to keep going." Yep. Hey, quit it. Quit it. All right, good. But yeah, so we get that and then we get like mhm, yep. Yeah, there's a bunch of little nods in like the opening sequence that I appreciate. And like that hug thing also gets brought up a little bit later, which I like when he transforms. Like there's a lot of like visual mirroring going on with this that I appreciated. But we also find out about this event that happened 16 years ago called K Day, where I think it's seven kaiju attacked at once. I want to say it was seven, because we find out about a little bit later, specifically, there was one space kaiju, and that plays like a big role in this episode, that there was a space kaiju during K Day. But yeah, so we get like that information, and then we get to skip headquarters, which yeah, yeah. I mean, like this one's not the worst one I've seen for this stuff. Like, yep. Uh, but no, I kind of like it, and I like that. So I like this one. It's like a government team, but it's not like a defense force. This is a research team, and I think that's kind of like an interesting spin on it. Like we do have a defense force in it, and in fact, we get like a member of that defense force as part of the principal cast, but having like the focus be more on like the scientific side of things is really interesting. That was something they did a little bit in Ultraman X, which I appreciated, and I'm really happy they're like playing with that a little more. Although I am a little bit nervous playing with that element and having an Ultra with like armor as a focus for him because then it feels like I'm worried it'll be a little too much of like a rehash of the ideas from X. But I mean, hey, jury's still out, and there's a lot of good in this that I'm not going to be too worried about it yet. Um, yeah, so skip scientific kaiju investigation and prevention. That they're all about trying to research and prevent kaiju attacks instead of dealing with them. And then we get introduced to the character I am going to have to work the hardest to tolerate. We get Yuppie. Yep, it's PAG 2.0. For anyone who's watched our Blazar videos, I hate PAG so much, and it's just enough. Like it's not. He's not as bad as PAG. I'm gonna like. I'll give him some grace on this. I don't think they're gonna lean into the things that I hated about PAG as much with UP, but some of the choices they're making are a little frustrating for me. Um, how do you feel about the design of UP? I don't act. I'm not a fan of the design, honestly. Like, it's gonna take a lot to get used to it. Like there's just something about it that's a little bit odd. And like I've seen robots, like human-sized robots in other Ultraman series, and I think, well, human and smaller. And I think that like a good example of that recently was a couple of years back there was Ultraman Decker that had like a small robot. I think that one worked. I think this one's almost a little too over designed to be cute, and I think that's gonna be like something I'm gonna have to deal with on a personal level of like getting over being annoyed by it, you know? Hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Again, I think eventually I'll get used to it. It's just gonna be frustrating, and I'm gonna need to like some of the aspects of how his character works with the whole splitting up into U-bot and P-body. I'm gonna need more explanation on how that works too. Yep. But yeah, so um, when Yuma gets there, he finds out that the rest of the members of the team have left to deal with um, an anomaly that happened at the Horn of the Space Kaiju. And he finds out that they've called him a bunch of times and he didn't pick up the phone. So he runs off and almost runs into this very well dressed man who is going to be our member of the defense force for the season. Yes, I wrote notes about that when he gets to the coffee scene because oh man, that guy is shaken to his core in that moment. Uh, but yeah, so yep, yep. So they Yuma gets there and they bring up some interesting questions. First, why haven't they gotten rid of that kaiju horn? It's just been sitting there for apparently 16 years. Why is it still there? Apparently, it's like a tourist attraction, but it's kind of in poor taste for a tourist attraction. And apparently, specifically space kaiju, the the defense force for this season keeps information tightly under wraps. Like they share information with the rest of the like government bodies about all the other types of kaiju, but space kaiju they specifically keep information discreet on, which is kind of interesting to me. Um, so when Yuma gets there, scanning the they start running thermal scans on the horn. Yuma, I like this little touch where like Yuma's trying to scan it, he can't scan it right, so his boss like helps him. Yep, yep, gives him a boost so he can get a little higher to scan it. Like, I think I'm gonna enjoy the team because it's a really small team, so I feel like we're gonna get a lot of like development for them, and they have like there's clearly a good dynamic already because they've been working together for a minimum of 3 months. It's just kind of interesting to me. Like, a good dynamic. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with that, especially with the introduction of Shu in this. But then we get our dangerous kaiju. Yep, yep. That it's a little parasite that came from space and was living inside of the horn, and it had somehow been dormant for 16 years, and something revived it enough that it went active again and is now going to be a serious threat. Mhm. It's honestly a damn good. Like I know you're a little more critical about like the big kaiju of the episode. I think that all of the monster effects for this episode are really well done. Mhm. Like I think just across the board, this was a really well done episode when it comes to the effects. Um, but yeah, so this kaiju parasite, which it's a parasite, so for a kaiju parasite, it's like the size of like a fucking schnauzer. It runs off and Yuma chases it. So Rin, who we later find out is like their engineering and computer science specialist, calls to UP to assist him, and that's where we get the thing that I'm again gonna struggle the most with this show, which is the head detaches from UP. The head is now U-Bot. The body grows a little dog tongue and becomes Peabody. Yep. Oh man. No, it again, that bothered the hell out of me for this. Like it was easily the part I struggled with the most of this episode was just okay, cool. I guess we have this fucking dog bot. It's a torso with a dog tongue. But yeah, so then we get a POV of the parasite, which I love that they play with POV a little bit in this episode because we get some POV at the start of the episode too, which I didn't talk about, but like where Ark catches the building and saves whoever's gonna be crushed. But we get another POV this time from the parasite's perspective. It goes underground and it makes its way into the kaiju of the episode's mouth. Uh, yep, I like this design a lot. I really like this design. I think it's like a good mix of Showa and modern. Like it's starting strong. Hmm. Hmm. Like I've seen a couple of clips of like other new kaiju designs they're doing for this show, and there's like a few of them that I really like. And there's one kaiju design that I was surprised to see they were bringing back so soon. No, it's Bazanga. It's Bazanga from episode one of Blazar. Yeah, yeah, they're bringing back the kaiju that Blazar tore the arms off of. Yep, yep. I'm honestly really hyped for that. But yeah, so I liked Shagon's design. We get yeah, he is the friend of all parasites. So Ubot shows up to Yuma. Yuma says that they should like split up to cover more ground and like try to find where the parasite went faster. And we get this little moment where like Yuma calls the robot UP, and the UP the U-bot gets upset at him and corrects him, which like I get both sides of this. First of all, it's dumb that it's it's it transforms into two completely sentient robots. But at the same point of time, like Yuma has worked with him for 3 months. This has presumably happened a few times. He should be able to get it right. But then Yuma goes into this mysterious cave, and we see Shagong like in full effect. It's still dark in there, so we don't get like a great view of him, but like we can see that it's like a pretty big sized kaiju, which gets bigger as the course of the episode goes on. And it's very turtle based, hence friend of all parasites. And when he runs back out of the uh, cave, Shagong sticks its head all the way out of the cave's mouth, which gets brought up later too, because we find out Shagong can extend its neck and does that for one of its attacks. Yep. And when he it sticks its head out, Shu shows up and just starts fucking taking shots on him. Yep. Oh yeah. No, like again, the design on this one I really like. I think it's top notch. And when we get the reveal of what it shoots, I think that's like a really cool scene with like really well done miniature work. Like the miniature work in this episode, I have a lot of praise for when we get to the actual like big action scenes. Hmm. That's actually something that I'll bring up now is the showrunner for this season really has like a big regard for like the Showa era. Specifically, he talks about Return of Ultraman, and you can see that in like the miniature work more than anything. Like there's a lot of miniature work and there's a lot of moving elements to the miniature work this episode, and like you can see that's like a big labor of love. Another thing, anytime we have like a scene where like it's Ultraman arc written on screen and there's like these swirling lights behind it, that was actually shot with practicals. The lights were instead of doing it CG, they had a bunch of beads with lights inside of them on a spinning turntable that they recorded and changed the focus on. Hmm. Yeah, little touches like that are like really cool to me too. I'm happy to see they're doing something interesting. Apparently, like the team itself, like they were like really annoyed having to shoot this because they wanted to just do it with like special effects, and he's like, no, if we're doing this, I want to shoot this specific thing the way that I remember it looking as a kid. Hmm. Oh, and we get a lot of really good practical stuff this episode. Again, like shout out to the production team on this. This is like heavily like it's one thing when it's like just the suits and the buildings, but like we get vehicles moving too this episode, and that takes a lot of work. Yeah, so we get an introduction to our team in full, and we find out what each one of them does. So it seems like the leader of Skip, Bon, is their geologist. Rin is their computer science and mechanical engineering expert. UP is their robot, and Yuma is their biologist, which I also really appreciate. I appreciate that like Yuma is going to be their expert when it comes to like how the kaiju work. Um, Something that we talked about a lot during our recaps for kaiju number 8 was how much we appreciated like that Kafka was really knowledgeable on kaiju biology, and now we have like literally a few weeks later a new protagonist who is an expert on kaiju biology. Mhm. And that's because there's no coffee. No, yep. There's no Kafka and there's no coffee. No, so we find out, which I mean, this should be like a red flag to a lot of this team, that Ark showed up when Yuma joined Skip. So already that should be like a hey, this dude who's an expert on kaiju biology showed up, and then a silver-skinned giant showed up the same time and started fighting the kaiju. That's a little sus. Uh, yeah. But we also get some information on the kaiju itself, Shagong. Specifically that like they occasionally emerge from the ground to eat livestock, but they're not usually like a considerable threat. And that the parasite feeds on calcium carbonate and is able to force its hosts to grow larger than they typically would. So Shagong is going to grow faster and larger than it normally would this episode. Hmm. Um, we also get this moment where they're all wondering why they haven't like found this parasite sooner. That's where we find out about the whole dormant thing, and it was Yuma specifically who like speculates this, which again I like that we have this hypothetical expert on kaiju biology putting out the biological answer to this problem. And then we get Shu, who really needs some coffee. He specifically says that it stimulates the mind, and the entire Skip team's like, we don't really like have coffee. It's like, oh, it's okay. You don't need to grind your own beans, which, first of all, assuming a lot already. They're like, no, like we don't have like a coffee machine, bud. Okay, well, do you have like instant? Hmm. Yeah. Well, no, we find out exactly what they drink in the next minute, but the green tea, yes. But yeah, no, I love that like Shu basically has a crisis of identity in this moment. Like, oh God, none of these people are drinking coffee. What do I do? And then, oh yeah, But then Peabody comes with some tea, shaking the entire time while walking. Like, I get it, you want to give it an AI, but like, why would you give him an AI that is devastatingly afraid of being clumsy? Like, he is. Yeah, yeah. This is the droid you're looking for. But yeah, we get a call from Ubot, and he's found where the Shagong is. There's a big hole, and the Shagong shoots its head up to try to eat him. And they find out that he's going to a chemical plant where they make calcium carbonate. So they need to try to stop it as soon as possible. And the skip team gets ready to go out there to help with the alarm and evacuation plans. That they are going out to that area specifically to alert the locals and help with evacuation. Uh, yep, I appreciate the hell out of that. Yep. Uh, before we get too into that though, I just want to say like I appreciate the hell out of that they're like actively trying to do actively trying to set up like what Skip is about, and specifically Shu says like, well, isn't it the job of like the fire department to help with this? And he's like, and the Skip team brings up, well, yeah, but like it's our job to help too, and we're able to, so we're going to go out there and try to keep as many people safe as possible. Yeah, so yep. But yeah, I appreciated that, and then we get Shagong showing up and a lot of really cool miniature work. Specifically, those tanks, awesome. Yeah, we get a bunch of tanks moving along a street to try to attack Shagong, and it's those little elements of, literally little elements of, like having these moving miniatures to try to fight the kaiju that I really appreciate. Like, you don't see that a whole lot in shows now, and it's kind of cool to see like that front and center for a scene. And then we get Shagong's response, where it extends its neck and then spits acid at them, and we get them like backing up to avoid the acid. Okay, yep. Hmm. Yep. Yeah. I think I think that's in part why Shu, spoilers to the end of the episode, Shu gets stationed with the skip unit. I think that's in part why that happens, because there's like clearly a disconnect between what the military's doing and what's good for the civilians. And I'm hoping that that's like something they play with a little bit, is the Shu having to kind of like be their middleman between the military and the general public. Um, how do you like that a shit ton of those parasites just start jumping off of him? Hmm. Like, again, great little touch with that. That like apparently it had been like laying eggs inside of the Shagong so it could like propagate. Hmm. That is what they look like. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like. Hmm. But then we get this scene where Shu and Yuma are interacting a little bit. Yuma's gonna try to use like his scanner thing as a weapon. Shu uses his gun. Some parts of a building are knocked off, and they knock Shu out, although he's awake like a few minutes later. So, but we get this scene where Yuma hears a voice, and he turns to see in this like reflection Ultraman Arc looking at him, telling him, well, and he asks to borrow his power again. Pulls out this cube, pushes on it. Yep, pushes on it. This thing pops out of his chest. He inserts it in, does this twisty thing, and then transforms into Arc. Which I know you hate that part, but the actual transformation, where like this spectral version of Arc appears behind him and hugs him. Yep, that was one of the better like special effects in the episode. I really liked that. I hope we see that every time he transforms. Dude, again, uh, if we get to Rube is the one I have the biggest problem with. I'm just gonna say that. Just pulling this thing open a few times. It makes it spin when you pull on the two handles together. Yeah. But yeah, so then we get the transformation. Um, Arc sets Shu on top of a building, and Shu takes a picture of him. Um, so did you notice the timer the entire time? In the back. Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, yeah. That yeah, there's gonna if you notice, we see that in Orb a decent chunk too. Yeah, you just kind of have to roll with that. Like they did a really good job with the design of Blazar covering that up, but like plenty of times you can see the thing. But yeah, so we get this cool little element, which I hope they do every episode, where we get like this running timer in the top corner to show how long he's been transformed. Because then we find out, yeah, we find out exactly how much time he has been Ultraman at that point. Um, the fight itself, really cool. I like, mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, the miniature work is amazing across the board. I love the compositing where you can see like the people in there. Like it's a very well done scene. Like the action across the board is great. Some other highlights for this. We get another attack, like another acid spitting attack. We get Shagong has these lights built into itself that it starts flashing at Arc to stun him. He can also make purple energy crescents that he can launch from his shield, not shield, shell. And Arc creates this rectangular barrier that he can block things with. Yep. Uh, so other highlights: Shagon can use lightning from its lights, and my favorite part of this fight, which I've told Josh is probably my favorite part of the episode, is when his color timer goes off and Arc, well, whatever the so weird side note I'm gonna bring up before I say what he did. Apparently, the alien that Yuma's bonded with is not Ultraman Arc. Ultraman Arc is only when they are transformed together. It's some other alien, and together they are Arc. Just a weird thing I learned. But yeah, I love. He says, "Use your unleash your imagination." And he takes the barrier, snaps it in half over his head, and stabs him with it. Yep, yep. I think it's the Arc Finalizer. I don't remember the name for sure. I want to say it's the Arc Finalizer. Oh gosh, is it him flying off, leaving the rainbow as the timer pops up to show you how long he was? Yep, yep. I will say that's one of the better swords. Like, so I'm rewatching a few other shows, like for shits and giggles. This is debatably one of the better weapons in the franchise, at least in my opinion. Honestly, yeah, I mean, like, that's fair, that's fair. I feel like Blazar, like, there was so much build up to it. Again, I gotta see where, like, what they do with it. And I think, again, I'm just nervous about the armor. Like, because the armor for Blazar is such like a crowning achievement thing, and I don't think we're gonna get that feeling from the armor in this show. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but that wasn't in this episode yet, so we don't have to worry. But mhm. Yeah, it's fair. Um, so Blazar, well, not Blazar. Jesus, talking about Blazar too much. No, Arc is Ultraman Arc for 3 minutes and 18 seconds, and then like a little bit over that, like a few milliseconds too. Hmm. He flies off, leaving this arc. It's a fucking rainbow. Could have just named him Ultraman Rainbow, but you know, probably wouldn't have sold well to the kids. But yep. But we find out that the skip team is worried. Yuma does this regularly because shocker. Of course he would have to. But they're giving him crap for doing this again. Shu is collecting samples of the parasite because apparently when when Ark killed the big parasite, all the little ones died. Shu is the one who names Ultraman Ark, and then we get like this last little part where it's like uh Yuma's wondering how Shu's doing because he left without saying anything. And then he shows up with this brand new coffee machine because he's going to be their GGF liaison. And that's how our episode ends. Had like a final thought that I wrote down as I was like watching the end credits, which was a decent first episode. The premise isn't bad, but I'll need to get used to a show aimed younger again. because like this is the showrunner for this one has gone on record stating that like Blazar was aimed a little older and a little darker, and he wanted to kind of like go the opposite direction because of that, and wanted to aim a little younger and be a little more like light and upbeat, which you can see in this first episode. Like it, everything takes place during the day as opposed to like the night shots during Blazar's first episode. Everything's like really bright and colorful. You get like some like you know how in Blazar's first episode, like we got all those shots from like a perspective of the street, and like we got the feeling of how big Bazonga was from that. Instead, like it's all of like these military vehicles being shot from like above to make them seem small. Like it does a lot of similar but opposite things, which I appreciated. But yep, especially when we get to the next and it's just body horror. Oh, yep, yep. Or all of the other Showa stuff where it's just war crimes galore. Yep. Yeah. Any final thoughts before we end this one, Josh? Yeah, that's fair. Again, I was happy to see some of these decisions being made. There were cool, like, choices I hadn't seen before. I am cautiously optimistic now. Yeah, I'll probably end up getting the SHF to go up there with the rest of them. But yeah, with that, tune in next time for our next Ultraman. Uh, for those watching, enjoy Ultraman Day if you're watching live. If not, I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next time. Bye bye.